Hey friends, it's Mr. Jim and welcome back to Kids Short Stories. If this is your first time, welcome to the family. We make fun stories every single day for you to listen to off of screens. And at the end of our story, I have some birthday shout outs. But if your birthday is coming up in August, you got to make sure that you tell your parents to check down in the show notes below to get on our August birthday shout out calendar so I can tell you happy birthday. My birthday happens to be in August as well, so I think it's the best month in the world to have a birthday. Well, friends, are you ready for today's adventure? Me too. Let's go. It was a beautiful day for River and Ruby to go on their adventure today. And this was not your average adventure, which actually all adventures are different and special in their own ways. But this one, they were looking for something very, something I've never seen before. Have you ever heard of Bigfoot? Oh, the Bigfoot is a mythical, legendary creature that we don't know if it's real or not. And, well, do you think the Bigfoot is real? I think it might be. And what is something if you were to imagine a Bigfoot, what are the things that comes to mind? Well, I think it's very hairy. I think it's pretty big and tall. And it definitely has two very big feet. Yes, and that is what River and Ruby were searching for. They were hiking through a giant redwood forest. Do you know what redwood trees are? Oh, they're magnificently, beautifully ginormous trees. Yes, trees so big that if you cut a hole through its trunk, you could drive your car through it. Holy smokes. That is one ginormous tree. And speaking of ginormous things, that is actually not the only ginormous thing that is believed to live in this redwood forest. And that is what River and Ruby were after. They had their bags packed with snacks and all their gear that they needed to go on this Bigfoot hunting adventure. They were determined to find a Bigfoot footprint. Why do you think you would want to find a footprint of Bigfoot? Do you think they were wondering his shoe size? Maybe. Or do you think maybe if we found Bigfoot's footprint, do you think that would mean that Bigfoot is real? Yes. Footprints can be really good evidence for finding information about something. So they brought with them some very special powder that when they mixed it with water, it would turn almost into like a cement or a concrete. And so they would put it into the print in the mud and add water, and then they could pull it out and it would have like a permanent formation of that footprint, which is a pretty cool, fun activity to do. Speaking of fun activities, did you know that we make some really awesome activities for you that if you look down in the show notes below and ask your parents to click on that link, we have a ton of really fun activities that you can do every single day. Hey, Ruby, take a look at this footprint, shouted River. River was standing right next to a river, and Ruby came running over. Wow, what kind of footprint is that? I don't know, said River. It looks kind of like a duck footprint. Look, I think they were right. In the mud right next to the river were a whole bunch of little footprints that look kind of like a duck feet. Do you know what a duck foot looks like? Yeah, it's got webbed toes, and I don't know how else to explain it. You'll have to use your imagination for that one. Let's make a cast of that footprint, and let's actually take a cast of all the footprints that we find, said Ruby. That's a pretty good idea, said River. Let's get collecting. A cast is another word to describe what I was talking about, of putting that magical powder with some water into the footprint, and then you let it dry, and then you can take it home with you, and then you have that real critter's footprint with you forever. That's pretty cool. River and Ruby spent the rest of the afternoon gathering a whole bunch of casts of different footprints. They found one set that looked like deer footprints, and they had those duck footprints from earlier. They just found something that looked like either fox footprints or raccoons. They weren't sure. But all of a sudden, they found something absolutely, magnificently ginormous. River and Ruby had been walking next to this river for a very long time, gathering all the different footprints. You see, bodies of water like a lake, a pond, or a river, that can be a great spot to find footprints. Because every critter of all shapes and sizes, they need to drink their water, right? Yeah, so if you find a source of water, that's probably a spot where a lot of critters, both big and small, come to drink. All of a sudden, Ruby froze. River, what is that? She was pointing with her finger down at the ground in the mud up ahead. It looked like a hole in the ground, but as they got closer, it was a ginormous footprint. Holy smokes! Did we find it? Shouted River. Shh! It looks like a fresh footprint. The mud is still wet. It must be nearby, said Ruby. They were looking at a giant footprint. One that is even hard to explain, but it was almost big enough for them to sit inside. I know, that is one big footprint, bigger than I think even a Bigfoot's footprint would leave in the footprint. Well, they were right. The footprint was very fresh. The mud was still wet and squishy, so it must be nearby. We have to stay quiet, whispered Ruby as she carefully removed all the powder and water that they needed out of their backpack. Holy smokes! This thing is like bigger than all the powder I have. Do you have any more in your bag, River? River pulled out her bag and there was a little bit more powder in her bag. They emptied everything they had and carefully added the water. You don't want to mess up the footprint when you're adding all this stuff to make the cast because you have to keep all the details just the way they are so that when you remove the cast, it still looks perfectly like the footprint you found in the mud. All right, let's take a look around. River and Ruby had to wait for it to dry first because it can take a couple minutes or longer for it to dry fully. So they started to look around to see if the Bigfoot was still there. All right, let's up that hill. I feel like the footprint was headed in this direction, so let's go that way. River was pointing up away from the river, and there was a hill that went up, and it was pretty steep. They had to almost crawl with their knees and hands in the mud as they pulled their way up, using trees and bushes and branches, places to grab onto and pull and drag their way up. But finally, they made it up to the top of this hill. Whoa, that was a crazy climb, said Ruby. I know, but look over there. River and Ruby saw more footprints in the mud over there. They couldn't collect those because they were all out of that powder for their footprints. They were kind of regretting, collecting all those deer, duck, and fox footprints along the way, but they were still pretty cool footprints. All right, what do we do now? Asked Ruby. I'm not sure. Well, do we keep following the footprints? All of a sudden, in the distance, they heard a sound. It was very close by, and you should have seen them. Both River and Ruby started sliding back down the hill as fast as they could. As they slid down to the bottom, the Bigfoot footprint had dried, and they carefully removed it and put it in their bag. And they started running out of the forest as fast as they could. As much as they wanted to find Bigfoot, it was a little scary actually hearing it for real. Well, now they have evidence, and so maybe next time they'll see him in the distance, and hopefully not too close, because I think that would scare me too. Well, great job, River and Ruby. You discovered a pretty amazing legendary creature in the Redwood Forest. The end. Hey friends, I need your help celebrating a birthday. Drum roll, please. Happy birthday, Raya, who's turning 8 years old. Raya loves animals. She speaks Mandarin and is so funny. Wow, Raya, I'm so glad we got to celebrate you and your big day on the show. Happy 8th birthday. And friends, remember, if you have an August birthday coming up, make sure that your parents know to check down in the show notes below to make sure you get on our birthday calendar. Well, I hope you all have a super duper day, and I will see you on our next adventure. Bye!